so he'll just come in later. Okay, we wait. In my head.
Is the new one you just put up?
Yeah. They have a copy of the record.
Did they agree?
No, today's us. Which is, we're just gonna go over this.
It's the same thing.
I'm sure they're gonna have some,
1:30 to 2.
you would hope. Hope to just get approved, and that's it.
Hey,
That's better.
please, I'm sorry, I'll do better at any time. Calendar. You bumped it to next week. We need to go through with our reports on
No, wait, no, sorry, that was that last Monday. So that we could respond to them today.
Yeah, okay, great.
Okay.
Okay, so Article 12, this is what we discussed last time. You guys proposed, I think, 260 regularly scheduled duty days, so we came back with 240, and that lines up with where we were comfortable with around, I think, like 14 calendar months. So that's what we proposed. And then for Article 17, I think we're pretty much in agreement for a lot of this article. So I don't know, what you may have a question on is F for comp time, when it can be scheduled and utilized. We just added that extra language to G Part 4. So it can be granted upon prior written approval from the chief, such as when the district will not suffer undue operational hardship. Everything else, I think, is pretty much, so the only thing we may have an issue with, or you may have an issue with, is 17.12. So our proposal was, if an outside detail or extra duty work is canceled and the officer is notified of the cancellation less than one, so we changed that. You had you proposed the one last time, so we agreed to that. So if it's canceled less than 1 hour prior to the scheduled start time of the work, then the officer shall inform his or her immediate supervisor of the situation. The officer shall be entitled to compensation at the rate of the outside detail or extra duty work for the length of time that the detail or work was scheduled to last. So that's what we changed it to. And then 17.15, we just added that to the Joint Study Committee regarding the missed details.
Okay.
So, and then Article 20, I kept the titles because I think some sections have titles and others don't, so I just kept the titles for 20.1 and 20.2. And then 20.3, it's basically what you all proposed. I just kept in the overtime language. And then for the second paragraph under K9, I added that language about the officers with more than one dog shall be permitted to retain those dogs. And then I think for the veterinary appointments, that's the same as what you all proposed.
Okay.
So 20.11, Sergeant Special Duty Assignment. We looked at it and we, I I think we may have changed, so for experience, we left at least 3 years of continuous law enforcement service with the district prior to the initial date of taking the examination. However, beginning January 1st, 2026, so basically the next contract cycle, the requirement will revert back to 5 years. For character, we put no record.
Didn't we do it to 2024?
What was it?
Didn't we do it to 2024?
Yeah, we had asked for 2026. Your proposal is
Yeah, I
2024.
was 2024.
Oh, I'm sorry, I misspoke. Okay, yeah, so the next contract cycle, 2024. And then for character, so we propose no record of 2 or more written reprimands, any suspension or demotion within the previous 4 years with the district or any other law enforcement agency. And then line supervision course, that was the same, I think, within 6 months of becoming a sergeant. Education, I changed the language a little bit, but that's similar to what we proposed before. So you can have a conferred associate's degree in related criminal justice field or successfully completed 60 semester hours, and an applicant may substitute up to a maximum of 30 of the 60 hours with CEUs, or completed at least 2 years of active military service in one of the branches of the U.S. Armed Forces, and received an honorable discharge, and I think that's how you all wrote it the last time.
Can I ask you a question? Because the way you're reading it's causing me to pause for a second. So they either have the degree or the degree and the CEUs, or they have 2 years? Or does the 2 years in military, is that or for the CEUs?
Well, I think we could talk about, I mean, if you
I was
all-
just curious what your proposal intended to be.
I just had the military time, if you have 2 years of military
Okay, so if you
time.
have 2 years in military, that subs for all of the education. This, you can substitute half. Okay, that's what I thought it was, but I want to make sure. Okay.
Right. And then for examination, so I can read through all this, but it's just the 30 days notice. You get to choose if you want to do it in-house or through a provider. We kept the passing score language, 70%. And then the new proposal under C is the rule of 5.
Without being,
Right, so I'll read that part. Once testing establishes a promotional list, those candidates who received a passing score and who are placed on the list will be considered for the position of sergeant. The selection shall be made by utilizing a rule of 5, i.e. each promotion must be made from among the then current top 5 persons on the list. Once selected, an individual is removed from the list, and the next selection shall be made by applying the rule of 5 to the remaining list. No person shall be passed over for selection on more than one occasion. And then I think the rest is pretty much what we had before.
Okay.
And then we added the active military deployment, which is what you put last time for,
Right.
yeah.
Okay. I appreciate the hard work you've put into it. And again, like I said, I really appreciate the fact that we got those in advance because it gave us sufficient time to sit down with the command staff, with the district bargaining team, to really go over the proposals and see what can we do, what can't we do, because it feels like we just keep kind of spinning our wheels a little bit. So hopefully we've come up with a proposal today that maybe we'll get it done today. So Darnice, you want to hand those out? And I'm sorry for not sending them to you sooner, but, we just, I think it
No,
was
that's
yesterday, was it, it was yesterday, and it was a board day, so we weren't able to get these to you in advance.
this is their decision. Thank you.
Thank you.
This is their decision for this.
No, I think they changed it.
All right, so in Article 12, we're sticking with the 260, and the reason why is, we really need time with the officers. We had 18 months, and 18 months is about 316 days, is what your probationary period was. So we've moved significantly from 316 days to 260, but we really can't move any further than that. We're hoping that you'll consider that in light of the rest of the proposals and maybe be okay with that. On a day-to-day basis, our officers have, capabilities on reserve, but their supervisor may not see those capabilities on a daily basis because they're not having fights on the campus. They're not restraining, crazy people coming onto the campus and that kind of thing. They're building relationships with the students and that, but we need to make sure we can see those capabilities in full effect and have as much time as possible with the officers. We don't get to see those on a daily basis, unlike teachers whose principal, they're teaching the class the same day, the same every day. They're providing academic instruction. The principal's on the campus. They do walkthroughs. Frequently, they're on the campus because of the, we're going to call it span of control for principals. Basically, what we have for the education field is different than what you guys have. So it's easier for a principal to see a teacher. Even in my role, my boss is down the hall from me. He's constantly watching me. He's sitting at the table with me today. So, they get to see us working on a more frequent basis than the officers. And so we really wish you'd consider this. We think it's a safety issue. We think it's what's best for the officers to have it at 260. Again, we were at 316, so it's not like we haven't moved. We moved to 260, which was trying to keep in line with what you had wanted with the 12 months. Again, that's a full-time employee, a 12-month employee for the district does 260 appearances. So that's what we're looking for from our officers. So then going into 17, the first page, there isn't anything new that you haven't seen before. When you get into 17.1G, we did add that language that you wanted in 4. So it's one of the exceptions for not using comp time is upon prior written approval from the chief of police or his designee. And we put in parentheticals such as when the absence will not create an operational hardship, because the way you had it written really didn't align with the fact that these are exceptions to the rule. And so this is an exception to the rule that if there's the absence not going to create an operational hardship, the chief can approve that.
But what's an operational hardship?
I'm using your language. So
What is it?
So you tell me what you thought operational hardships would be.
I want to know what the department, what the other side thinks an operational hardship is.
Well, Officer O'Sullivan, we just took your language.
That's Officer O'Sullivan, I'm Officer Lopez.
Sorry, sorry,
The
Officer Lopez.
better-looking one.
I put my glasses on.
So what we're trying to do is just reach what you asked us to do.
So what's the difference, I guess, with the parentheses?
There isn't a difference, it just doesn't, the way this is written, these are exceptions. So the way you had it written was as if it weren't exceptions, that you're creating an exception with that language such as language. All we did here was make it so we can change it to a comma if you'd like. It just seemed grammatically better to have it as a parenthetical, because it is showing an example such as when the absence will not create an operational hardship. So I guess, in my opinion, an operational hardship is if this officer needs to use comp time the day before a holiday, and we have no issue with getting coverage, then it's not going to be an operational hardship. Now, if we have 7 officers in one sector or one zone or whatever that are going to be out, having an 8th person may be the operational hardship. So that's what we consider.
Okay. I think that's how it works now.
I was just curious as what their interpretation was.
Okay.
Okay, there are no new changes there. The next new change really is in 1712. We did what you asked. So if cancellation is less than 1 hour prior to the scheduled start time of the work, the officer informs their supervisor, and then upon confirmation of the cancellation and lack of appropriate notice, the officer shall be entitled to compensation for the scheduled length of time of said outside detail extra duty work, period. Now, we did add that the provision would become enforceable on December 1st, 2021, or the date of PBA ratification, whichever is earlier, because this isn't something we can go back and do retroactively back to January 1, because we'd need to have that confirmation. And then again, it sunsets on December 31st, 2022, because hopefully by that time, the committee will have made a decision on how to move forward.
Okay.
Then the Joint Study Committee, we also added in the language that they're going to meet, study, and make suggestions for the seniority system, discuss the frequency at which outside details or extra work is canceled without notification of the employee in a timely manner, and discuss possible solutions. Upon completion, the Joint Committee suggestions will be items for negotiation for the CBA dated January 1, 2023. If discussed during negotiations for a reopener, this item will not be counted as one of the 2 additional articles to be negotiated unless other sections within Article 17 are also opened. And then again, the committee sunsets on December 31st, 2022.
Okay. So we can put in, I just want to be sure, because this is what I think it says, but we can talk about it during reopeners for that sentence that says,
Yeah, it's for the, because I looked at when the contract would come open, it would be the January 1st, because your contracts are calendar year. So if it sunsets at the end of December, I'm hoping that they come up with something before that. But the January 1, 2023 contract would be the first one after the sunset date. So if we come to agree, if we start negotiating, let's say in September, October, it is for that January 1 contract in 2023. So, we've done one-year deals before. So I don't want to assume that it's a reopener, but that's the intent, is
okay,
that.
but it can be a reopener.
Correct. That my thinking is, because this is a full book, January 1, 2023 should be a reopen year. But, who knows what's going to happen between now and then, that you guys maybe, have a whole new contract or something comes up and we have to do something different. But this is, the intent is that in January 1, 2023, we're going to be talking about this. It's an automatic item for discussion, and it won't count against you if it is a reopener, that, you get the 2 articles. It won't count as one of the articles unless you're opening something else up in 17. So if you want to talk about, Article 17.2, just randomly throwing a number out there, 17.2, you want to talk about that, then 17.17 is one of the articles that's being opened. Make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So moving on into 20, we can add those titles if you'd like. We took the titles out because we're just going with status quo language. This is the language as in the contract right now for 20.1 and 20.2. So we can't add those titles. We really don't even need to do that at bargaining. We can just agree to do that, because we'd also talked about making sure everything was numbered appropriately throughout the contract, since it's a full book, that we want to make sure that everything's the same outline form. Then going into 20.3, the assignment pay. During our conversations, and we had some more conversations with the chief and the staff, that we took into consideration a couple of things. One, the crisis response team they're not changing the name. They were going to change it to emergency something. They're now keeping it as CRT, so we're going to leave that the same. You'll see that we didn't raise the sergeants and the detectives, because one of the comments that was made at bargaining was talking about the FTOs and how important they are. And so we started looking and thinking about the FTOs and the work that they do, given the fact that we have a lot of new members. We want to reimburse those officers that are doing the FTO more than they're getting. Right now, they're getting $1,200. We wanted to raise them up to the $4,000 limit, just because, it seems like the work they're doing with these daily reports and working closely with these new officers, is pretty important. And I guess the chief has gotten some feedback from officers that they like that. So,
How many FTOs are there?
I don't know that off the top of my head. I know Officer Lopez is an FTO. I think Officer Lynch is an FTO. There are, I wouldn't hazard to guess how many there are right now. And AC Weiner hasn't been able to get in yet. He's had to deal with an emergency, so.
Okay. And then, okay.
For the K-9s, this is our standard, the language we've had before, that it's they're going to get paid 1 hour per day at 1.5 times a rate of $15 per hour, the state minimum wage, whichever is greater, for each dog they're assigned per pay period. We did add the language in here at the bottom of that paragraph that applies to every day of the year. We put, again, in parentheticals, because you had mentioned, including weekends, holidays, and breaks, because that's the intent. They're taking care of the dogs during winter break, on the weekends, in which the employee is personally caring for the animal. Those officers assigned more than one canine as of the date of the ratification of this agreement will not have a canine removed as a result of this increase in supplemental pay. That seemed to be a concern, was that since we're raising the rate, you thought, well, at least we got the impression from your side of the table that you were concerned we were going to take some dogs away because of the rate of pay. That's not our intent. So that's why we put that language the way it is there.
I think we were just worried that you were going to do it in general, but, so for this, you consider it overtime.
Yeah, it is. Well, we don't consider it, I'm not considering it overtime. I'm not going to get into that discussion, but per our conversations on the law and the case law, I still have some issues on, how it falls within FLSA. We feel that this encompassed the language you requested, which was the time and a half, $15 an hour, or the minimum wage. If the minimum wage for the state becomes higher than 15, we would raise that as well.
So, but you guys don't consider it overtime?
Well, I don't think that's relevant for this discussion.
Okay, but you're not, so you don't have an opinion one way or the other?
That's not what this is about. This is about the canines and what we're paying those canine handlers and caretakers.
Well,
You know,
it's
I-
relevant if it's overtime or not, I mean.
Well, so what are you saying? You're going to say that, okay, so you're working an 8-hour shift, you're going to count this time and a half rate, this extra hour a day for the dog, you want that counted in towards your overtime compensation? Because that's a brand-new conversation we've never had before, that we would.
Well, not really, because when I was reading from the calculation of overtime statute.
Well, does it change whether you want to agree to this language? Because this is the language you requested at the last bargaining
I'm
session.
not saying that, I just want to know if that's what you guys are thinking. if
Well, I would
that's-
have to go and get our legal department to weigh in on that. We didn't have them weigh in on it, to that respect. So right now, this is the proposal. We took your language, we've put it in the contract as this is what our proposal would be. I mean, we're trying to get you where you want to be.
I understand.
Okay.
I think, that's a relevant question. Okay.
All right, so then, let's see, we already did 20.1, I'm flipping the pages the wrong way. 20.5 is the salary adjustment. We'd already, I think, agreed in concept to that. We did find a typo in 20.7B. The word "on" should have been "of," so we just made that change right there. It's not substantial, but it was amount on $100,000. It should have been amount of $100,000. That's dealing with the performance-based pay stipend.
Okay.
All right, and then going into 2010, I think we've agreed to that, calling it the West Area Supplement. And then 20.11. So your original proposal was status quo language back when we started bargaining a while back, and we've been beating up this section of the contract for a while now. And we seem to have, the different sides have serious philosophical differences as to this language, and I think a lot of that hinges upon this ULP that's hanging over both our heads. The ULP is not going to be determined, we won't get a determination on the ULP till February. So at this point, we're not interested in going to impasse over language that's at a ULP at this point. And it'll be resolved at the ULP one way or the other. Either your side is correct or our side is correct. And then at that point, we can make adjustments to the sergeants. But at this point, it doesn't make sense to just keep beating our heads against something that I'm not sure we're ever going to get agreement on, because if you agree to our language, it seems like there's a thought that it somehow gives up ground on the ULP. And we feel the same way, that there's certain things you're trying to put in there that would give up ground for us on the ULP. And, in talking to the lawyers, it's not going to be resolved till February. We have a new contract being reopened any day now for the reopener. 20 is always up at the table. To me, it makes more sense to just say, okay, you know what, let's go status quo for now. And then when the ULP's completed, we can figure out what we want to do with the language, both sides.
So, okay, this is status
So this
quo.
just goes status quo language. The only thing that we did change, and you'll see in red, is, again, cleaning up this language. There were bullets, so it said qualification, it just had these green squares. We want to put numbers there so that you can point exactly to which paragraph you're talking about.
Ours isn't in color, so all you changed were you
Well,
put-
it's,
you put the
you should have
numbers.
gotten a color copy, Katie, because we don't have a lot of ink on these, but, so in qualifications, it used to have just a square under the first one, at least 5 years of a continuous law enforcement service. That was just a square. We just want to number them, the paragraphs, instead of just having these little bullets there, so when we're talking about it, we can, instead of going, oh, qualifications A, it's the fourth bullet down, instead, we just say paragraph, subparagraph 4. But that's it. There's no other changes that we've made to the contract.
Okay. I'll just say, we're proposing this because we like it. I don't think, what we agree to has an effect necessarily one way or the other on the ULP, because it's, what's been happening already, even before bargaining, but
Well, we took your initial proposal. This was your initial proposal when we first started bargaining. Your proposal was status quo language on the
Right,
sergeants.
and that was a long time ago.
It was a long time
But,
ago,
okay, we'll talk about it.
I have a question
sure.
on 20.3, the FTO one that you put, you made it to 4,000. How is that going to be paid out? Because as we work now, officers don't have a trainee with them all the time. They might have one this week, I have one coming next week, and it might be a month before I see another one. So,
How is it currently, and unfortunately, I'm at a disadvantage because AC Weiner's not here, so how is it paid out now? Because I don't
Currently-
anticipate they're changing how it's paid out, they're just changing the
well,
amount.
I'm going to show you, from the past, years ago, it used to be paid out, if you were an FTO, you got $4,000 supplement, it was built into, you had it as a supplement on the side of your check, and you got it year-round. Somewhere along the line, they changed it. They said, well, you know, it's been a while since, back then we weren't training too many officers, we weren't getting too many officers coming in and out. I think it was with beginning of Kitzrow, maybe, Kevin?
Yes, yes.
It was beginning of Kitzrow, maybe Leon's time. They stopped, since we weren't having too many trainees, new officers, they changed it to, we will pay you 2 hours of overtime every day you have a trainee with you.
Chief Leon, actually.
Chief Leon, yeah. And it's currently like that. So this $4,000 supplement that they're showing here on paper looks nice, but it's ineffectively not true.
Well, I'll have to check with them, because the intent when we had the conversation was that this was going to be a supplement, just like it is for the K-9, just like it is for CRT, just like accreditation and sergeant detective.
Yeah, but if you read the rest of the contract where it says for only the time you're actively training in FTO.
Then it would probably be prorated. So the way we do it, let's say, and I can speak to other contracts because I know them a little, we work with them a little bit more on a day-to-day basis. So if you're a football coach and you coach half the season, you get half the supplement. So if you're, with a trainee, if that's the way they're doing it, with half the year, then you would get half that supplement.
See, well, that's where I find an issue with this also, because, you're hired as a police officer, let's say, just because there's no crime happening at the moment, doesn't mean your salary should get cut in half. You're still a police officer. You still went through the certification.
That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about what you're,
An FTO.
an FTO,
You
you're
went through-
training a particular officer, because you're the one who brought it to our attention. That's why we brought it to the
Well,
chief.
then FTOs have to go through a course, they have to go through an FDLA-approved course, they have to be, they have to apply, they have to be accepted, they have to have a certain amount of criteria that meets it. So now the department doesn't want to, if you go through all this criteria, you become, and now there's no trainee, or they don't give you a trainee, so you.
Well, I guess I'm just taken aback. I can go ask how they intend to pay it. My thought is it's an annual supplement. I'm a little taken aback by we're offering you more money and you're,
Well, you're offering it on paper, but it's, in reality,
but it's a contract, so if you're not being paid this amount, you could grieve it, right?
I think they just want to know how it's paid out.
And I can go ask, and
Yeah.
unfortunately, we had police representative here, but they're not here today because of an emergency, so
Yeah, I'd like to
try
get
and get that paid
clarification on
out.
that.
We'll
And
figure
then
that out.
I think that we would like to leave the take-home vehicle for sergeant. I know that, we said that most people have a take-home vehicle, but if that's true, I don't see the harm in leaving that.
Well, the only concern I had was that people were thinking that it was somehow tied to this. It's not a hill I'm going to die on this, so the take-home vehicle, to me, I just don't want anybody to assume that if you are, let's say you were an officer who gets the sergeant special duty assignment, and then maybe 6 months you decide it's not what you don't want it, that suddenly the car you had before you became a sergeant is going to get pulled away from you with the supplement. So we can leave it in there if you'd like.
Okay. Okay, I think we're going to go and talk a little bit.
Okay,
Do you agree with the FTO thing?
I'll walk over there.
Get the answer on
Yeah, I'm
the.
going to walk over right now.
Okay, thank you.
Showtime.
Okay.
Yeah, comes in handy. Got a mouse in the car. Plug it into.
So, Article 12, I think we're still thinking about that, because we just think that the 14 months is fair with the 2 months coinciding with the break times and things like that. And really, as a law enforcement officer, you're never riding around with your supervisor all day long. So that's kind of our thoughts on that. For 17.1, or I'm sorry, Article 17, I think the only thing we may have an issue with is the training. We proposed the high liability or state mandatory training, and I think you all just left for subsection F, comp time may not be scheduled or utilized on any day when training is scheduled to take place without prior written approval from the chief of police, and we had the high risk and
Right,
state
so
mandatory.
that doesn't encompass all the training that we need the officers to go to. So one of the examples that was used with me was, on Miranda, there was a training on Miranda rights with some officers at one point. There were officers who weren't there, about Mirandizing juveniles. So it was, so I guess somebody from the state attorney's office came in, provided training several years ago, I guess. There were officers who didn't go to that training. And then what I was told the rest of the year, those issues for those officers kept coming up. The intent is that there's not any training that's not critical content. We're not going to drag the officers out to come to training just for entertainment purposes. It's information we need the officers to know. Now, I think we have to leave that up to the chief, because I don't know how to define that with high liability or state mandated. We could say departmental mandated training. We could put that caveat in there so that it's training that the chief has designated as being either state mandated, high liability, or critical content by saying it departmental mandated. So we could do that.
Do you guys want to talk more about it? Because you really know what training you go to all the time, so.
I just, with this day and age now, with the age of recordings and stuff like that, I know the department records any type of training we have now, and we have a platform that the officers that were missing, or the officers that couldn't make it for that day, they had an emergency, they get to watch the training when they get back. So I don't see it being such a problem anymore. Maybe years ago, before the age of,
and maybe you can enlighten me there, that how does the chief know that that officer actually was present and attentive at that training? If they're just doing it on their spare time or at home, how do they even know that they did it?
Because you have to sign off on it, you have to sign off an acknowledgement, and you have to do a little survey saying, did you like the presentation? Any type of training that this department's given us in the past 10 years now.
They still do it.
It comes with some type of evaluation. You have to evaluate the instructor if it, and it's done on the platforms that we have, and you have to print, some of them, they even require you to print out the certificate and send it in to your trainer. So,
Sorry, I'd like to bring up that it's presently being done under Train You as we speak with departmental training. We watch the videos and we sign off acknowledging that we did.
So not all the training that we deliver is done over Train You, as you know. A lot of the training that we do is over the summer period, and that's actually a full agenda curriculum that we give during that period. So, I think that it's, you're generalizing too much to say that every course can be delivered virtually. There's a lot of courses that, to really obtain a competency out of it, you need to be attending. A lot of it, sometimes there's interactions required.
Right.
There's de-escalation. You can't do that virtually. You can learn the basics, but you can't practice it. So there's practical parts of courses that have to be present to be delivered.
Correct, the ones that involve interaction and the member to physically participate. I agree with you there. But I don't want to say anything else, but presently doing in the last couple of years, training on Train You, where we actually were doing it in the classroom previously, but that's all prior Marjorie Stoneman Douglas, which I know, because most of our time in the summer, and rightfully so, is being in the schools when there are children present. So therefore, the amount of training time has been drastically reduced. I agree with you that for firearms and active shooters and such like that, and like you had said, some other type of de-escalation, you can't do that over a computer. So I'm totally agreeing with you. But when it's something that is just a classroom lecture, there's no reason why that could not be done remotely.
I mean, during training in the summer, we've had even a whole day of people from the finances coming down and talking to you about your retirement and things like that. The way it's written, that's part of training. You wouldn't be able to comp out on that day or anything. So that's why we're trying to distinguish active FDLE training or high liability training, or word it specifically for the fluff training where they didn't have anything really to do with us. They just, and they would change speakers and they would change things at the last moment,
Yeah,
That's-
isn't there a lot of command staff that don't attend this training too, some of that training?
What's the question?
Some of the training that we're going through every year that you're requiring, the departmental training?
What's the question?
The question is, isn't there a lot of command staff and that doesn't come to take that active training too?
The command staff doesn't get scheduled along with the rest of the members, if that's what you're asking.
Yeah, I'm making sure, I mean, that we all have the mandatory training
Right.
is firearms training, everybody has to do it.
That's right.
There's certain
So-
training when we talk about required training for everybody, every sworn officer.
So I
Does
think what
every
we're-
sworn officer
think what
receive
we're
the
supposed-
same training all year, every year?
So not every officer receives the exact same training as every other officer, as you probably recognize. ESU officers get different training than other officers. So just to make a general statement that every officer gets the exact same training, that's not an accurate statement. I think what we're focused on here is the majority of your membership that cover campuses have a specific training requirement
Oh, no, this
that
is
they have to have and have to have delivered to them. And they have to be proficient in that so that when incidences occur on the campuses, those first-line officers are capable and ready to handle the situation.
I mean, we could just add or job duty related training if you want to,
Yeah, I was going to say, if you find issue with the words, why don't you propose something for us to consider?
high liability or state mandatory or job duty related
If it's
training
job
or?
duty- Job duty related is anything.
See, I think this is the problem we're having. I get where you're talking about, Alex, if it's, I've been to seminars where suddenly they throw in somebody coming in and talk about FRS, which doesn't really maybe affect my work, and I'm like, why am I, I'm sure Katie's been to these ABA conferences where you're going for your law degree stuff, and they bring in some speaker, and you're like, why am I even sitting here through this? It's almost like a sales pitch you're sitting through, so I get that, but that's not what we're trying to talk about here, and I think in those cases, that's where the chief, you can say, hey, look, you got a half day with this and this, can I take my comp time? That's where that chief can come in and say, yeah, that's not required training, really. That's something that we're offering to the officers to better their careers or better their finances or whatever it is. So you're using FRS as an example, so I'll just continue using that. So let's say the FRS person is scheduled to speak the last 2 hours of the day. You could easily look at the agenda and say to the chief, like, hey, can I take my comp time to these 2 hours? Because I don't need to be here for this.
Well, then again, then you're violating the contract that says it has to be 7 days prior.
Well, I understand that, but I would think that whenever you get the agenda, that you could look at it. And, but even then, if you go to the chief, the intent is that if we can let you take the comp time, we're going to let you take it. It's just we don't want officers missing training that is crucial for the work that you're doing. Because, Marjorie Stoneman Douglas is on kind of everybody's mind this week because of what happened yesterday, right? So everybody's still thinking about that. We've seen, officer-involved shootings, and when the grand juries and stuff come back at the law enforcement agencies, it's supervision, training, and there's one other that I can't remember right now, but there's usually like 3, but one is really about training and supervision. So that's what we're trying to tighten up here, is so that we make sure that, we used to be one of the best trained police departments in the state. And I'm not talking just like school districts, but everybody. We had the best trained officers. We want to continue that with offering you guys the best training, having the best training for you. So God forbid something happens, you're all ready and prepared to do it. So I get where you're coming from, where you're calling it fluff training. And if you can come up with language that would work, we can do that. We just don't want anything that, as they said, is job-related and required for you to do your job well and safely. We don't want officers being able to use comp time for that.
No, I understand, and we're trying to work with you also. It's just difficult to find the actual
Yeah,
word
it's
that we need.
difficult to define it, so,
We also have a chain of command, which is being enforced vigorously in this department. They don't want you to jump out of the chain. And the way it's written, the way it's verbally written and read, most likely, the supervisor, sergeant, or maybe just a lieutenant is going to deny it right there. And you can't go above it because you're violating the chain of command by trying to go around now and they take that very seriously, and.
That's not the case. That's not how the chain of command works.
Well,
Just because you get a no at one level doesn't mean that the process ends. You have the right, after that no, to go to the next higher level for remediation to that decision.
I understand how you mean in theory, but sir, to be honest with you, last year we've had issues with officers being denied their comp, right from the captain down, and they would get the form back denied, and they wouldn't make it any further. So,
If we have another COVID issue, what are we going to do then, if we're not in-person training?
I mean, we can just say training which is required and cannot be made up, because a lot of the training does happen online, so I don't see the harm in,
You can go from one training cycle to another. You can maybe mix it up and mix and match the training if you needed to. I mean, we've done that in the past where an officer was in training cycle A, and they couldn't make this first week because they were going on a cruise that first week, but they made it in training cycle B instead.
Well, see, they would be able, in that case, you would just get your schedule changed, so it's not like they're missing the training. They've just revised your schedule.
But
So that's not- that wouldn't-
Sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't, but they always try to, and sometimes you're not going to be able to accomplish that, though.
Well, we also have had training cycles over the summer where both of those opportunities were missed by the officer, and then we had to hold a special overtime training for that group of officers that missed. So what you're suggesting doesn't work either. We're not going to be paying overtime every time just because an officer wants to take off for training.
But we did a lot of training via, when we had the COVID also, so we didn't do
I
it.
don't disagree with that.
So it can be done.
Well, I offered two different proposals, so I don't know if you know.
Well, one you offered your own team shot down, the job-related training, so they've shot that down. So what was the other one?
That's required and cannot be made up. So, because I mean, a lot of the training does happen online, so.
I'm waiting to hear, is your team okay with something like that?
Cannot be made up.
Yes, because I use the prime example. You have to be present for firearms. You have to be present for active shooter training. You have to actually be there for CPR training. I'm doing this off the top of my head. There's just three of them right there.
But all that can be made up too, so.
Correct, yes.
I mean, there's really not much that can't be made up again, you know?
Well,
And you do
I
have-
think
you
there
do-
is, if it's something like the de-escalation training, and we're offering it 2 times, you miss both times, how do we make that up? We'd have to have a special session just for an officer, just because they wanted to take comp time. I think that's a little unreasonable. I
Well,
mean,
I understand what you're saying too.
But we also have, I think FDOE is coming out with additional 5 days' worth of training that's going to be mandatory in the next year. And so that's in-person training. So if we start allowing officers to take off for that, we wouldn't even meet compliance with FDOE.
The only other solution I can think of right now is pretty much like what the NYPD does, the 10% rule, or 10%, no more than 10% of the department can have off on a certain day. And
yeah,
that's
but I
it.
think but what he's saying, I mean, NYPD isn't under a grand jury still. I mean, I think we're still under the grand jury for Marjorie Stoneman Douglas. We don't have the luxury of not giving the training that DOE is pushing down. We can't say, oh, well, 10% of our officers don't have to be there. I don't think we have that luxury.
No, you're not saying that 10% don't have to be there, but that's your maximum. So if some people put in, if 3 officers put in for the day, I don't think you get that large numbers that the department keeps trying to say. They're all taking, training is throughout the whole summer. We're talking about 4 or 5 weeks. So if a couple of guys took off, if 2 or 3 guys took off on a Monday, and then 2 or 3 guys took off on a Friday, and one guy took off on a Wednesday, you're not talking about a large number of officers any given day that are taking off, and the department seems to be able to waive those things when they want, when it benefits the department, just like the COVID.
Well, I think we've got your point now. Let's kind of move on to the other sections.
Well,
because
also, I mean, if the in-person thing's a concern, we could do which is in-person or which is required and cannot be made up.
we can talk about that. I want to see where we are with the rest of the contract.
And I mean, at some point, it's on the officer. If you offer multiple days and they just don't go to any of them, I mean.
Well, it's not just on the officer, because we have to cover schools, We can't give the training out during the school year, so there has to be a period of time when we can actually have training.
But they're only requesting comp time on one of the days, I mean, presumably.
Not necessarily. There's not been a limit that you only get one day during the summer. I mean, they could ask for every single training day off and like, well, I can take this a different time. So there isn't that restriction. So it's not,
And those are mostly in person, right?
The most you can ask for any time is 3 days, because that's the most you're going to be able to build up anyway. So.
And a
you know,
prime
we're not-
example of that
let's-
is what
We're not taking out
presently
the whole
is-
summer.
I'm sorry, that an email came out about, over the summertime, we qualified for firearms. Then a subsequent email came out sending people all the way through January to qualify for firearms, because I got questions on this of people. They told me, I just qualified over the summer a few months ago. State mandate is every 2 years, the department is every 1 year. Why am I going for firearms now? So my response would be, if someone misses de-escalation, we are actually doing something right now that was given just a few months ago. So there's no, that kind of undoes the argument that we just were presented with.
Okay.
Or the opinion, I'm sorry, not
Kevin,
argument.
you bring up a good point, right? So that was transition training from one firearm to another. That was not the firearms qualification course.
Well, I was told that I
second, please
qualified with
let
that
me
new
finish.
firearm, which I'm carrying.
Let me finish, please. So the training that's going on right now is actually for FDLE qualifications. And the reason why we're so concerned about limiting ourselves to state mandated training is because FDLE only requires firearms every other year. And that is subpar to what our best practices are here at the district and throughout most of Florida. So if we want to go down to the lowest common denominator and just rely on state mandated, that's going to be subpar for what is expected as a service level here in Palm Beach County.
well,
We
let's,
do
I
that
think
when
we,
we run out of ammo, to what happens when it's a financial issue?
It's never a financial issue to my
It
knowledge.
hasn't been a financial issue before?
No, what, the ammo shortage was due to a nationwide ammo shortage. It wasn't due to finances. If you
Well-
have another incident that you're talking about,
Yeah.
But the forms we filled out over the summer were for FDLE indicating that we passed, for qualifications to carry this firearm, so it is a qualification.
The whole point of comp time was to put it in ahead of time so the department had time to, 7 days before, so you can foresee this amount of guys are going to be taken off that day, and to get the right coverage or to change whatever need be. Because let's be honest, comp time is being put in 7 days ahead of time, so you have a foreseeable event. In the day of, if the officer calls in sick, there's nothing anybody can do about it. If the officer's sick or has an appointment, a doctor's appointment, he tried to do it right by using his comp ahead of time, you denied him, so now he calls in sick, I have a doctor's appointment, or I have a dentist appointment.
His child or his wife.
Yeah, or my child is sick, or my wife's not feeling well, or,
I think we've gotten the point on this one, so let's move on to the next section of the contract and see.
I think we're basically good with the rest of 17. We just, I had a question because you put upon completion, the joint committee suggestions will be items for negotiations for the CBA dated January 1st, 2023. So I think you meant 2024, right?
No, because this contract that it's going to sunset December 31st, 2022 is when that committee sunsets.
Okay, so you just
So-
mean that's when it'll be done?
Yeah, that-
Okay, you
that
didn't mean
con-
for the new CBA.
Correct. The contract will be dated January 1, 2023. You guys are on a calendar year, so the next contract after that sunset is January 1, 2023.
Well, for reopeners.
Well, it's subject, we have in there the subject for negotiations.
Right.
In January 2023.
So those were, that's obviously the sticking point for 17, the training. So if you want to, come back with whatever you think based on our feedback. And then for Article 20, we liked the titles. And I
We
think,
said we could add those, that's fine. That's perfunctory, it's not a big deal.
okay, and we wanted to keep for 2023, the take-home vehicle. The K-9 language is fine. For the FTO, so we would need, I guess, more language based on the past practice that's been going on with all the FTOs getting 2 hours of compensation.
Well, what we want to do is because it's a past practice, we don't put that necessarily in the contract. So what we would do here, instead of striking $1,200, we'd leave the $1,200 there, and this is what we did in the CTA contract when we increased their supplemental pay on some things over a course of 2 years. It would say $1,200 and then have parenthetical, as of January 1, 2022, so that's January, okay. January 1, 2022, it would become $4,000.
Okay, and we
And
want
this
to,
is, because this is an assignment pay, this is operational. This says at the top, this is accompanying an annual supplemental compensation as indicated. So it would become the $4,000. We don't need to address past practice because we're addressing it here. This would completely nullify and revoke any past practice we had to how the FTOs were paid before.
as of,
January 1, 2022.
and we would want language in there that the FTOs are considered an active assignment regardless, you know, of whether the FTO is actively training someone.
Well, then you would need to provide me with that language. if
Okay,
you'd
well, I'm
like.
telling you now, because I'm telling you now. So as of January 1st of each year, the district shall issue a list of all assigned FTOs who shall receive the supplement. So just so everybody knows, you know,
So
when
if you
they're an
could send me that
FTO.
language, because
Okay, when I get back to my
yeah,
computer.
sure, you can type it up and send it over to us, and we can look at it. We'll see, I mean, if we can come up with an agreement here, we can find a computer, we can draft all of this out and get it done, but,
That's what she was telling you now, so we can come up with an idea, so we can, I mean, we want to type it out.
no, I understand, I understand.
But I have a question, though. So what you're saying is we added to that assignment, but the other assignments don't need that? Or it's already, what I'm getting at, it's already in there, so it's assumed it's been practiced. So why are we selecting this one title for
Well,
that?
because of the past practice that's been going on from what I'm hearing.
Right,
Some
and
people
under-
aren't getting paid the 2 hours now if they aren't assigned someone in actively training.
And under case law, past practices can be nullified a couple of ways. One, by writing a letter and giving it to the other party and opening it in negotiation, saying that we are no longer going to abide by the past practice. We can do that. If we get agreement on everything else, we can certainly do that. And so then it would result with just this language in the contract that says it's an annual supplemental compensation. So if you are given one of these assignments, this is the annual compensation
For all of them.
for all of them. So if you are designated and given a field officer training assignment, you would get an annual compensation of $4,000.
Presently, how many field training officers are,
It's a little over 40 approximately.
And they're all active training officers right now?
No, they're not.
That's what I mean, how many active training officers do we have?
So I don't actually understand the question. So we currently have,
Who do people
currently-
currently being assigned?
we currently have a roster of about 40 FTOs.
We have a roster of 100 people who are training officers also, but how many are we actually using?
I don't have the
That's
answer.
what, that's the kind of, the question we were asking before, though. I mean, if we're only using 10 FTOs, current FTOs right now, it's kind of where we're getting at.
Yeah, so but what's the concern?
Concern, we're just asking a simple question, is how many FTOs are we currently using?
That varies from
Because are
time-
we going to spread, I mean, is it, now we're going to go down to 5 FTOs, or are we going to go, you know, I mean,
yeah.
and now you're going to have a trainee, or training officer will have somebody for 300
So-
or
so the
216
program-
days a year?
The program is based on the need of the department to train officers. So the more officers we're hiring, the more FTOs we're going to have assigned.
No, I get that.
That's the answer. So if you ask me 6 months from now, how many officers are we going to have in training? I don't have the answer to that.
Okay, well, that's the question we were asking before, that's all.
And
were just-
I know
question.
we have several dozen vacancies open, so the anticipation is that we're going to try to fill those.
But they're also
That's
having,
that's as clear as I can make it, because
Okay.
No, I
I don't have a crystal ball.
I would safely assume, but I was told that we have 60 vacancies, so therefore you're going to have a great need for field training officers, that hopefully we come up to par. And so there is a need for that.
I would agree with you, except that you're assuming we're going to fill all 60 of those vacancies, and they've been open for quite some time.
Yes, I know, it's a recruitment and retention problem, which I actually would love to be able to additionally put in, I apologize, in that steering committee, is to look into ways to be able to keep the people that we have. Because they're just flooding out. The last negotiation session we had, 3 people put in their papers to leave already on that day.
Okay. All right, we're going to have to talk more about that on our side. So for 20.11, I know you said it's status quo, but that's why I asked for a colored copy, because it's not. So for 20.11A1, you took out at least 5 years of continuous law enforcement service. You guys took out with the district.
Oh, it should be in there. That was, it's supposed to be with the district, because that's what it had before, but I was using your version, and then something must have, because if it was in red, we took it out, so, okay, that's fine.
Okay. Okay, well, that's where we are now with everything, so, I mean,
Well, so 20.11, you're fine with leaving it as status quo?
I think so. But 20's not closed yet, obviously, with the assignments, so.
Okay, so what is it that we need to get to you for, on the FTOs, that would make you comfortable with accepting an increase in pay for that?
I think we're gonna have to talk about it more, because,
Because the information I was trying to get for you, because, but I haven't gotten back from Mr. Mitchell, he must be in a meeting. We're going to run out of runway to get it into a board meeting, because we're getting towards the end of the, into the holidays. There's a board meeting November 3rd. So if we were able to have reached agreement today, and I don't have confirmation from Mr. Mitchell, but it's my understanding from how we usually do that, we could have the new pay in the officers' checks, not the retro, but the new pay would be in their check right before Thanksgiving, and potentially having the retroactive pay, which is almost would be a full year's pay, right before the holidays or thereafter. But if we can't reach agreement today, and we keep moving it back, because we have difficulty getting the schedules to align between everybody on all sides of the table, we keep moving it back, getting into a board meeting becomes more difficult, because there are just fewer of them.
okay, well, we just heard about all this FTO stuff today, so I think I'm gonna have to talk with all of them more. And I threw a few things out there, so I mean, if you have a suggestion as far as the training issue.
Well, I think you had come up with language, let me go back to where I'd written my notes here. That's
If we want
requiring.
to, I'm sorry, may I? I'm just used to doing this, and it's very frustrating. 13 rounds of this is totally, I said a word once in the past.
Ludicrous.
Yes, thank you very much. I use a different word. Is the following, is I am so used to being locked in a room where I came from and negotiating if we had to go all night, because we are able to make it, and I don't mean this disrespectfully, we are able to make a decision right here today.
And I understand that,
So
but
I
can-
feel that we should be able to, we'll caucus outside, you caucus inside, you give us your best, we'll give you ours best, and then
And
we'll
that's what
know.
I'm willing to do, but Ms. Mendoza just indicated she'd have to talk to more people about this, so it was.
Willing
Oh.
to caucus if they
Okay,
want.
okay, no, I didn't get that. I thought you were gonna have to go talk to your membership. I can
No.
get we can work
We
this out.
represent, we are the membership, the three of us right here.
And I understand that, and the problem we've had, though, in these, trying to get it past a certain point, we get told it's past your regular workday, and so we were trying to be cognizant of what your regular workday was,
We
that's
also made
why.
it clear that it didn't matter to us at this point either.
Okay, so we've got, I know that the guys here in the rooms may be upset in the back, because they're gonna hit overtime pretty soon, but we're here till 5 o'clock, so we can keep going.
We're on overtime after 4. 3.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, if you wanna.
Okay, we
you
can
know,
caucus,
if you're-
and if you guys wanna caucus a little bit, okay, that's
Okay,
fine.
and are you gonna talk about the training?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, welcome back. We were able to make some changes based on our discussion, and we got those to you, so we're just,
Everything today, depending on the FTO, issue. So for 12, thanks for meeting us in the middle, so we're happy with that, the 250 regularly scheduled duty days. Article 17, that looked all good. They were happy with what you came back for F, so Compensatory time may not be scheduled or utilized on any day when training is scheduled to take place unless the officer can provide an alternate training plan in writing that is acceptable to the chief of police. So that's fine, they're happy
Okay.
with that. So the rest of 17, I think, was good with us. Thank you for giving us G4, that's fine. It's the same language, just with
It's
the
the same
comma.
language, we just put a comma instead of the parentheses.
Yeah, that's fine. And so Article 20, 20.1, 20.2, that's just the additional titles, that's fine. So for 20.3, we were fine with leaving the 4,000 for sergeant and detective, and then the canine language is fine. That's what we said we were okay with. So for FTO, it says 12,000, or I'm sorry, 1,200, 4,000 as of January 1st, 2022. So I just added some language down where you put the asterisk down there.
Right, so there's an asterisk that says, "Those officers actively assigned to an FTO position as of January 1st of each year shall receive the annual stipend."
Right, so I wrote, FTOs are considered an active assignment regardless of whether FTO is actively training. Those officers actively assigned to FTO position as of January 1st of each year shall receive the annual stipend. Any past practice regarding FTO payment shall conclude on December 31st, 2021. Thereafter, the $4,000 supplement will control.
Well, I think all of that is completely unnecessary, only because once we've changed the language and we put this in here, any past practice that was attributed to that language is gone, just under basic labor law. So you don't need to add all of that superfluous language that I think just serves to confuse people.
I don't think that it does, though, and I think a lot of the membership's concerned that you're going to cut it off as of today instead of carrying it through the end of the year.
Well, so right now, the contract is what it is. It's the 1,200. We're not going to change the past practice through the end of this school year, but as of January 1, this language kicks in where it becomes 4,000, and it's those officers that are actively assigned to an FTO position as of January 1st of each year shall receive the annual stipend,
Right.
period.
So we're just
So-
fleshing out what you just said.
Right, but you said the same thing like 2 times in there about it starts on January. I just think it's way too much language that doesn't need to be there. So we're basically giving you what you asked for. We're telling you that as of January 1st, those people who have been assigned to an FTO position are going to get the $4,000. It's in their check. It is a supplement, just like all these others. We don't put in there for sergeants or detectives, like if you're not working a case, then you're not going to get the supplement, or you're getting the supplement. We don't do that for any of these other ones, so I'm not sure why we would do it for this one.
Because membership's saying that there's been a lot of communications recently about revamping the FTO program, and I think they're concerned about the time from now to the end of the year. And if what what I wrote is what you were fine with, then I don't see the problem putting it in writing.
So but I'm still unclear as to what because I don't have your written proposal, I'm hearing you just speak to it. It's easier for me to read it than to just have you keep reading it back to me. So what is, the issue is you think that we're just going to cut FTOs off, that we're not going to pay them for the rest of the year?
According to the 2 hours you've been giving them.
No, commitment from your side for the rest of the
For the
year.
rest of the year, it's fine. That's
They
why we
will
left the
continue to get
1,200
they will
there. Right, that's why we left the 1,200 there. The past practice says we're not paying the 1,200, we're paying the 2 hours for every day, right, that they're training?
So that's the
We're gonna
commitment.
continue that
that's-
through the end of
that's-
the
That's
year.
all,
So I
that's
don't
all the
see
side's
big
looking
deal
for.
Putting it in there.
That's all the side was looking for. The commitment saying that the 2 hours, the past practice that's been practiced now, the 2 hours will continue till the new $4,000 takes into effect. In other words, people aren't going to be cut those 2 hours, say, all right, for now,
No one's been getting the 1,200.
No, I'm aware of that. That was something new that I just found out today. So, okay, so I'm going to have to
We
think
actually
about
talked
how to draft the language so that it meets what you're saying without being so superfluous that it's going to confuse people.
I don't think it's confusing, but if you want to,
Well, it's not confusing because
Draft it.
you have it in front of you written down. I don't,
do you want
so.
me to walk this over to you? and you
Sure,
can-
that would be great, and then I can actually see what you're trying to put in here. So we could put some kind of language. I don't want to put in language of the past practice. 'cause
I had another question, I'm sorry about that.
Okay.
The supplement, how's it going to be paid off? How's it going to be paid out? Like the rest of the supplements broken up through all the paychecks? Chief?
All I can say is they're going to get that much every year.
Well, that's a big difference if they get it all in one check at the beginning of the year, or they get it broken up, because then it won't affect their.
Spread it out over the year.
Spreads out, yeah.
And this one would be spread out over the year, just like
Okay,
any of the
that's-
other ones.
That's
Just
what we wanted to
clarifying,
clarify,
Yeah,
yeah.
because
Here they
this
are,
is a
yeah.
special duty assignment, it's just like all the other ones.
Okay.
I mean, I guess I'm comfortable with saying any past practice regarding FTO payment shall, conclude on December 31st. We could do that in a separate letter, though, and based on labor law, that when we change the language, that nullifies the past practice because we've changed the language.
I think we want it in there.
Okay, I mean, I can add, I'm a little uncomfortable with the way, I'm not too clear on this active assignment, because you're either assigned this or not. We're looking at this on a go-forward basis, as this FTO is just like the CRT, it's just like the sergeant, the detective, the accreditation manager. If you are assigned that task, you get the annual supplement. And by us saying that we're going to look at it on January 1st of each year, whoever's on that list on January 1st that's an FTO will get the $4,000.
Okay, because right now, if they're not actively training, they get zero pay, so.
But that's not our intent going forward.
I think that's why we wrote it the way we wrote it.
That's why we wrote it this way,
Well, we
so.
put it in there to clarify it.
I just think, I'm very hesitant to add language that gives rises to grievances based on a misunderstanding or misapplication. So that's why I'm very hesitant, not that I'm trying to hide anything. I don't like adding language that isn't necessary, and I feel like this is not necessary. I feel like we have moved so far today to get this agreement, and I'm not seeing a lot of movement on that side. So, I mean, I just think that at this point, if this is all that's left, I can agree to say any past practice regarding FTO payment shall conclude on December 31st, 2021, period. Because it already says that as of January 1st, they're going to receive the stipend. It doesn't matter if they're actively training or not, because it says if they're actively assigned to an FTO position on January 1st of that year,
I think
they're
that's
getting the
what
supplement.
they had a question about. What does actively assigned mean? Does that mean when you're only actively training, or just that when you're assigned? Because that's what a lot of the membership, I think, was
The act-
already wondering.
The actively training language is language you brought to us.
I know, but I didn't know about any of these issues until today.
No, but you're
So-
asking us to articulate what it means, and you brought the language to
Well,
us.
the language was in
Well,
the
I meant
contract, we brought it to your
actively
attention. The language is
with-
in the contract.
Actively assigned and training someone.
So I'm not clear on what actively assigned is. You're either assigned or you're
So,
not assigned.
well,
So I'm
so
not-
We
He
can
can
take out the
redo
word
what he
actively.
wrote.
If you're assigned FTO, that's our intent.
That would simplify it.
That would
Okay,
simplify.
so we'll
Okay.
take out actively, we'll just have assigned. And we can add the any past practice language, which is completely unnecessary under labor law, but if it gets us a deal today, if that's all that's left, is that all that's
If
left?
that's all that's left, then that's not that big of a deal, so
Well,
let's just do it and
well,
get it
that's
over
why I'm
with.
asking, is this all that's
Well, I mean,
left?
but we're talking
You have
about
my
it,
paper.
and
I
making it
think
more of a
that's
bigger
all
deal
that's
than it
left.
needs to
Okay, well,
be.
hold on.
You got to remember too, a lot of these issues that we're bringing up, it's because
Trust
it's
issues.
had impact on us in the past. You've seen it now yourself that it says 1,200, and you just find out now that officers haven't been receiving anything.
Yeah, but
Oh.
if it's, I don't understand why it wasn't grieved then. If, I was not at the table,
Because it said
At the time.
the word actively training, so it could not be
So all he
grieved.
did was he take you away
So
from
if you,
the-
if you don't, if they
Yes.
decided that they're not assigning an FTO to you, or this month, or next 3 months, there's no FTOs, you got nothing for that for those months.
Or
You
they
made
just take you
nothing.
off the unit.
well, it's either that was the intent, or if you don't agree that that was the intent, it should have been grieved.
It couldn't have been grieved because the way it was worded, actively training, actively assigned.
Well, listen, the
No,
current
that's-
leadsleadership was not here during that time.
Okay, and that's
Yeah,
what, but
listen.
unfortunately,
You
that's
can't
what we're
speak to
trying to
it.
do. We're trying to clean up the wording.
And it's not saying that you
Both
guys-
sides should have done this years ago.
It's not saying that you in
It wasn't just your
particular,
side, it's our side
have-
too.
All right, I don't think
Yeah.
this exchange is
Yeah,
very
it's not-
helpful.
yeah.
So we can add that language about the any past practice, we can do that. Are there any other changes?
No, that's it. And I think you You put 21 in here, but I think we TA'd that. So.
On which, yeah, well, okay, so 21 because you guys had asked, because it was,
We TA'd that.
okay. I think that just is a flow over from before, so we'll fix that and. All right, so what I'll do, I mean, we can conclude the bargaining session because it seems we've reached an agreement, which is wonderful. So what I'll do is I can go back to my office and make this last change and bring it back and you and I can sign the TA.
Okay.
All right.
Great.
Well, thank you for all your
Thank
hard
you.
work. Appreciate it.
Hopefully it
thank
won't ever
you.
last this for long again. I think I'm going on
Please.
12 years. Thank you, Mr. Vargas.
Team, thank you for making this happen today. I came back down from the superintendent's office. I said, I think we're close. Came in from caucus, so thank you for making it happen.
I just want you to know that I had a full head of hair before we started.
Me too.
Mine's turning gray very quickly.
If I may, just because you had said it earlier, because I know this is going to get out and we're going to get phone calls. What is your anticipated said before the board? So I could,
Okay, so we're going to hopefully get it before the board on November 3rd.
okay?
And then we can bring it as a good cause item. The raise would be in the check. We confirmed that. It would be on 11/26 check would be the raise. That's the increase.
Okay.
The retro would be on December 10th. Now, those are tentative, if something happens, Peters Falls, that's our anticipated date. That's the day we're pushing for.
Okay.
Something weird, but we do have to have ratification before we can push the button. So
Yeah,
we would have to have it ratified.
we'll do that fast.
Okay.
Just-
I only have like the hard copies of the TAs. I suppose I can just scan those to you.
Well, what we'll do is we have hard copies of the TAs. Tomorrow we'll get it together and put everything together in one packet because we have to upload it to the board with all the signed TAs. We'll put it all with one packet. We'll send a copy to you so that you can agree these are all the TAs that we have, and then we can upload it to the board.
Okay, great.
Okay? All right, thank you. You guys have a nice afternoon.
Thank
Okay.
you, and we'll rush this ratification. I'm already looking at my watch.
Yeah, as soon as we
dates, yeah.
review the TAs, then we'll just post the notice and we'll
Yes.
let you know.
Okay, we'll get those to you as soon as we can tomorrow. Tomorrow's Friday, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes,
Thank God.
Thank you.
Checking, I wasn't sure.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.